afternoon, and welcome to the New Resources for Elder Fraud Prevention and Response Networks webinar. Thank you for spending your time with us this afternoon. This is the first webinar in a series of 5 Wednesday webinars discussing approaches to combating elder financial exploitation. This webinar will be recorded and shared with registrants at the end of the series. For today's webinar, there are a number of pods in Adobe Connect that you may use. The FAQ pod is in the middle of your screen, and it has answers to a number of common questions, as well as additional resources and links. To that right of that pod is the chat box that you're seeing is being populated with people's names, organizations, and where they're currently located. And on the left side of your screen, you'll see the Q&A box. Please put any content-related questions in the Q&A box, and as we have time at the end of the webinar, we'll go ahead and address them. If you have any technical issues, feel free to put them in the chat box and a member of our team will assist you. I'd now like to welcome Jennifer Duane, Senior Program Analyst in the Office of Older Americans at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, to start today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to all of you who are putting yourselves in the chat. I'm just delighted to see the broad, diverse base of attendance here today, and particularly, of course, our colleagues in Adult Protective Services. And I'm delighted to see so many bankers, especially from the compliance area of BSA, Bank Secrecy Act compliance, and Community Reinvestment Act compliance. But really, welcome all of you, and thank you for being here. First things first, we need to walk through this disclaimer. I'll do it as quickly as possible. So this presentation is being made by a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau representative. In fact, I need to amend that to say there are two of us, Lisa Schifferly and I, on behalf of the Bureau. It does not constitute legal interpretation, guidance, or advice from the Bureau. Any opinions or views stated by me or anyone else as a presenter are our own and may not represent the Bureau's views. And further, this document includes links or references to third-party resources. The inclusion of these links or references to third-party sites does not necessarily reflect the Bureau's endorsement of the third party, the views expressed on the third-party site, or products or services offered on a third-party site. The Bureau has not vetted these third parties or their content or any products or services they may offer. There may be other possible entities or resources that are not listed that may also serve your needs. Okay, so here's who we are today. I'm Jennifer Duane here on the left, Senior Program Analyst in the Office for Older Americans. I am the team lead for the Elder Fraud Prevention and Response Networks program. A little while later, you'll hear from Lisa Schifferly, my colleague in the Office for Older Americans, and then Ben Miller, who's Senior Director at ICF, who works closely with us on our programs on the Elder Fraud Network program. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about foundations for elder financial prevention and response networks, known as EFPRNs, but I'll probably just refer to them as networks because that's what we are. We'll talk about launching and enhancing networks, strategies, and resources, and some of these resources are new or are improved, recently updated. Convening communities to build elder financial prevention and response networks. We have a new report coming out soon. It's very soon, so we'll highlight a few parts of that for you as well. First, we'll start off here with a poll. The first poll is, you can read it. Are you familiar with elder fraud prevention and response networks and currently working with one? Are you familiar with elder fraud prevention and response networks and not currently working with one? Are you not familiar at all with elder fraud prevention and response networks? And we'll give it a minute, see how we go. Quite a lot of you here. Goodness gracious. Looks like the numbers might be slowing down a bit. Shall we go with that? It looks like 36% of you are not familiar with Elder Fraud Prevention Response Network. So great. We will go over that a bit, and 28% are working with one. Okay, so next, we'd like to know who you are. Please fill in. Yes, look at all those financial institutions. Wow, thank you for being here. All right. Looks like the vast majority, 54% of you, are with financial institutions, followed by others, 141 others. Adult Protective Services, very good. Okay, shall we move on? All right, so moving on with Foundations for Elder Financial Prevention and Response Networks. I'll start with our mission here at the Bureau to regulate the offering and provision of consumer financial products or services under the federal consumer financial laws and to enforce federal consumer financial laws fairly and consistently, and to educate and empower consumers making financial decisions. The Dodd-Frank Act of 2010 created the Bureau and our Office for the Financial Protection of Older Americans, more commonly known as the Office for Older Americans. Our office is one of several special population offices within the Bureau. We identify older consumers as persons aged 62 and older, and our office's mission is to protect older people from financial harm. We conduct research, we create and disseminate resources to help older consumers make sound financial decisions at key moments in their life or in their lives. Our office also places a special focus on the needs of financial caregivers and on building collaboration to increase prevention and improve response to elder financial exploitation. We accomplish this by working with elder justice professionals and other stakeholders such as yourselves. For more information about our resources, visit our website at consumerfinance.gov/older Americans. And I also want to invite you to find the sign up form on that website on our homepage that will inform you of future programs and product releases, etc. So you can get on our list and hear from us every so often when we make an announcement or share a blog or have other resources available. So a little background. I think we're preaching to the choir mostly here. Many of you know a lot about this, but some of you indicated you do not. So for those of you who may be new to the issue, financial exploitation or elder financial exploitation is the fraudulent or otherwise illegal, unauthorized, or improper actions that can be perpetrated by a caregiver, a fiduciary, a person known to the elder or unknown to the elder, a family member, or other individual. And in these cases, I hear a lot of you are having audio issues. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope it's not because I'm not enunciating. I will carry on and hopefully our team can help sort that out. So back to this. The resources of an older person are used by another for personal profit or gain, or actions that result in depriving an older person of their benefits, their resources, their belongings, or any assets to which they are entitled. Communities across the country have created collaborative networks to help protect their older residents from abuse and exploitation. Elder fraud prevention and response networks bring together key stakeholders like law enforcement, financial institutions, APS, adult protective services, legal aid organizations, and other key stakeholders who work to fight elder financial exploitation. Today, we're going to focus on nuts and bolts of networks and some new resources we have developed to support these networks in their fight against elder abuse, with an emphasis on those who fight elder financial exploitation. But first, what is a network? As you can see, a network is, we consider, a sustained and largely voluntary collaboration, effort, or partnership that works to detect, prevent, and or respond to elder financial exploitation. Networks are sustained because they are not a one-time event or a meeting. The efforts are largely voluntary from formation to operation, an important distinction from state-mandated MDTs or similar interagency protocols. They may be known by a number of different names, such as an Elder Justice Network, a Coordinating Council, a Multidisciplinary Team, or MDT, a FAST, Financial Abuse Specialist Team, Coalition, Task Force. I've even heard Elder Justice League and other creative names. Being voluntary, most networks are not organizations in of themselves, such as nonprofits, but instead are a coordinated group of stakeholder organizations that meet, or stakeholder organization representatives that meet regularly and may have an issue or a project-specific subcommittee or work group, and they may plan and host events and trainings, among other activities. A little background on how we started this work. I joined the Bureau in 2011 following 10 years of running a nonprofit organization in California that did focus on elder financial abuse prevention. So when I joined up, we were getting ourselves started. The office was newly opened. The Bureau was recently stood up, and the Office for Older Americans came together with a dynamic team. And we, at that point, decided we really, amongst other things in our mandate under the Dodd-Frank Act, we decided we really wanted to, dig into the elder financial exploitation issue as much as possible, because it is such a threat and a key problem for older people. So in 2015, we launched a study. Then this was after some early beginnings, and some of you from North Carolina and possibly Illinois and Florida and New York will remember the early days of pulling together some pilot networks and doing sort of the groundwork that led to the Bureau conducting a study in 2015. And then in 2016, we released this report, which hopefully one of our team members can post the link to it in the FAQ and link section if it's not already there, but it's called Fighting Elder Financial Exploitation Through Community Networks. Following that, in 2017, we started our National Network Development Initiative, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. And then in 2020, we released an online turnkey planning model for the convening of stakeholders, and that was to help develop new and to enhance existing networks. But I think we all remember what happened in 2020. That was when we actually had to stop meeting in person. So fortunately, over the course of the next year, as we discovered that the pandemic issue was going to linger for a lot longer than any of us expected, we were able to pivot to a virtual model, and we'll talk a little more about that as we go. But this is the basic timeline for how we started this program. Back to the research, some of the most common ways networks fight financial exploitation are through community education, professional training, and case review. In every location where we have facilitated a convening or a summit, they can be named different things. We refer to them as convenings. The stakeholders who participated have identified community education and awareness and professional cross-training as the most important activities that they as a group can undertake to address prevention and improved response to cases. Case review, however, can be very challenging due to concerns about privacy and confidentiality, but increasingly networks are building collaboration to address these concerns. And meaning building collaboration also means building trust, building relationships, and building infrastructure and policies and protocols to handle these activities, particularly case review. Other initiatives that we see networks deploying our victim assistance programs, policy and legislative initiatives, and then some common features that we have seen and we still continue to see since the study are having a resourceful coordinator. It's one of the most important things. I think it is the most important aspect of a network or a collaborative partnership, is to have a coordinator who's dynamic and resourceful and can lead and sort of herd cats, so to speak, get everybody together and manage all the details. Startup funding is often needed, but many times networks start with no funding at all and carry on and are able to do amazing things without any funding, but it is difficult. Technical assistance is a great benefit, especially when it's offered by other networks nearby. We are increasingly seeing financial professionals from the banking sector taking a lead in supporting network activities, even leading the networks. The startup and ongoing funding is used often for a coordinator position or to conduct the events and activities, and long-term funding for staffing as the network grows. Existing networks and local, regional, statewide convenings are often a catalyst for new networks, which offers opportunities for development, replication, the sharing of best practices, and especially with the aim to cover larger areas where large numbers of older people reside. The benefits of networks are many. You can read the list here. The increased reporting and interagency referral of cases is highly reported. Once everybody gets together and gets to know each other in a network, it's amazing the exchange of information, understanding what another agency can or cannot do. And of course, this can vary from state to state depending upon state laws that like welfare and institutions codes that cover adult protective services response, penal codes, et cetera. Things can vary from state to state. So getting the networks have a great benefit in sharing information about each of the members that helps with collaboration and helps to sort of dispel some of the friction that is sometimes happening in communities because people don't understand each other and their response and why they do or do not respond in a certain way. Including the improved coordination, the use of community resources in general, increased collaboration on investigations is quite profound. Networks also disseminate a great deal of information through community awareness initiatives, through their conferences, through sharing information with each other, and by increasing the diversity of their membership to include increasingly financial institutions and others. Since 2017, we have facilitated the production and supported 17 convening events in 15 states and one national convening, which was called a summit. And here are the 15 states with the 17 convenings. And you can see we actually started in Florida in 2017, and we will be hearing from our partners in Florida in a couple of weeks at an upcoming event. Same with Hawaii. We did 2 virtual convenings there, bringing together 5 islands, representatives from 5 islands. Maryland was very recent and virtual also. And of course, next week we'll hear from Michigan and South Carolina. And then you see here the nationwide LGBTQ plus network summit, and that you will hear about a little bit later from Ben. So there's our list for the moment. It's growing, and we're looking forward to sharing more information with you on how you can take this to your community. One last poll for you here before I hand off. What would be your preference? Now, this is an interesting question because before COVID, we almost always met 100% in person. Then we met 100% virtual, and now we're back to in person and testing out hybrids or a mix of both. But what is your preference for network meetings? I also want to mention that anecdotally, we hear that the virtual meetings have been incredibly successful for networks and actually have been kind of a silver lining in the pandemic crisis, in that more people have been able to engage with networks as a result of being able to tap in virtually, and we're seeing an increase in the types of stakeholders that will attend because of the accessibility of virtual meetings. But here we are. We see the results. 61% say they would prefer virtual, in person, 6% hybrid, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a mix, 23%. So there you have it. Okay, with that, I will turn over to my colleague Lisa Schifferly, who will take it from here. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. Hi, everyone. My name's Lisa Schifferly, and I'm a senior policy analyst in the CFPB's Office for Older Americans. And I'm going to talk about launching new networks and enhancing existing networks. So in particular, I'm going to let you know about a newly updated resource called the Online Network Development Guide. And the Office for Older Americans, we developed a free online network development guide to help local leaders like you all create new networks and expand the capacity of existing networks. So the online guide contains downloadable resources like templates, fillable worksheets, checklists, discussion guides, tips for networks, and a lot more. And what has been updated recently is to make it more user-friendly in terms of the layout, and also to add a lot more resources about virtual convening. So it's very interesting to me to see in that last poll how so many people still want to do virtual convenings. And fortunately, the updates we made to our network development guide will make that easier. So on the next slide, you'll see some highlights of the network development guide, which you can find at consumerfinance.gov/elder networks. The web-based development guide includes a lot of different materials to help you plan network convenings and trainings. It has planning materials, sample invitations, a facilitator guide, worksheets, and other documents, and we'll walk through those in a minute. We also have a bunch of materials for existing networks that might want to expand their membership and review priorities and do things like establish working groups or establish a case review team. Basically, the online guide is a resource with a lot of different elements to help stakeholders like you bring a network together for the first time or to convene and expand an existing network. It's not a prescriptive guide with certain tasks that have to be done step by step or stakeholders that must be included, but rather it's a set of ideas that networks can pick and choose from to implement based on the needs of your particular community. So the guide is broken into 4 parts. The first part is planning a convening, and a convening, like Jennifer explained, is just a way to rally stakeholders and community leaders together to create a collaborative network. Usually we recommend a network kick things off by planning a convening. It's just gathering a core team of key community members to help you plan the convening and to reach out to the wider community. The next part of the guide is about hosting a convening. And how you do host the convening and conduct it can really set the tone for your network. So this guide gives you suggestions on how to provide opportunities for collaboration and make sure that everyone's voice is heard during the convening. The third part of the guide is about reconvening and establishing your network. So after you've held that first convening, it's important to keep going and bring community stakeholders back together to determine the next steps towards addressing priorities identified at the convening. Finally, the last section is about expanding network capabilities. So for those of you on the call who already have a network in place, this is a good section for you to look at. After your network establishes priorities, You can consider leveraging working groups to reach goals, engaging the community, and growing the influence of the network. So let's take a look at each of these parts of the guide. Let's start with planning a convening. The plan and convening section includes a planning guide as well as interactive timelines, agenda templates, and email templates. So all of these convening planning materials have been updated to include variations for in-person or virtual convenings. As we found during the pandemic that many people switched to virtual and some chose to remain virtual. And actually that poll made me realize that even more want to remain virtual than I thought, while others may return to in person. So we do have different templates for whether you're hosting an in-person event or a virtual event. So there's an agenda for in-person events and an agenda template for virtual events. The guide also has tips on how to facilitate effective convenings, as well as ideas for cross-training topics like maybe training people about powers of attorney or law enforcement review of suspicious activity reports or financial institutions reporting of elder financial exploitation, or a variety of other topics that might be of interest to your community. So let's look at the timelines that the guide provides. When you're starting to plan your convening, these are great tools. They're dynamic timelines. So you can plug in the date you plan to host your convening, and then this will generate intermediate dates for when you should do things like sending out invitations, drafting agendas. It's a really great planning tool that makes planning much easier. On the next slide, you'll see that we have an in-person convening timeline. The previous slide was about a virtual convening. This one's for in-person. So it's the same concept, but the intermediate steps and deadlines are slightly different in light of the different steps you need to take for an in-person convening versus a virtual convening. So if any of you have looked at our network development guide before, I do encourage you to check it out again because we did just update it this past week. And all of these new forms about virtual convenings are up there now. On the next slide, you'll see that we even have a sample registration form. So when people register, you might want to ask them to describe what sector they're from, like we did at the start of this webinar. So you can ask them whether they're with APS, financial institutions, law enforcement, legal services. It can be helpful information for building your network. So the left side of this slide has that sample registration form. And then on the right side, you'll see some of the engagement resources that we have on this online guide. One key tip we have for improving engagement, for example, is to include polls like Jennifer did earlier in this presentation. It just keeps it interactive, keeps the audience engaged, while also getting you information that might be informative to your network formation and development. Another engagement tool is video. If you're doing a virtual convening, we do encourage participants to turn on the video to allow people to see facial expressions and facilitate communication and to stimulate some of that face-to-face interaction. Due to the really large size of today's webinar, which we're super excited about, we're not able to do that type of video interaction here. But for smaller local convenings, we do highly recommend it if you're doing a virtual convening. On the next slide, you'll see more about the next section of our online development guide, which is after you plan the convening, it's time to host it. So this section of the guide covers things like supply lists. What should you have on hand to make your convening a success? Everything from pens to whiteboards and more. There also are talking points for opening remarks at your convening, as well as sample group activities, which I'll show you in a minute. In fact, the guide even has sample thank you emails to send out after the convening. So it really makes it easy for you to set up a network and start with one of these convenings. So let's look at the group activities. Here's an example of the group activities. In this one, we asked the group to discuss how stakeholders can work together to prevent and respond to elder financial exploitation, both in terms of case review and resolution and in terms of community education and outreach. At an in-person event, we'd have people put ideas on sticky notes, and then you can arrange them by theme and use the voting tracker on the right side there to organize the responses. It can really be a fun, interactive community building activities. And there are ways to do this in a virtual environment as well, which our guide goes into in more detail. Now, the next section of the Network Development Guide is about reconvening and establishing your network, because we don't want your network and your convening to be one and done. The idea is for these networks to be sustainable and helping the community going forward. So this section of the guide gives you tips on how to plan a follow-up meeting. So 2 things we suggest that networks try at this stage would be maybe to work on naming the network, or think about working groups to work on. Working groups might be on case review, community outreach, or other topics, and we have more suggestions in the guide. We also have group activities to help with both. So on this next slide, you'll see a couple of the group activities for establishing your network. Next slide, please. On the left is a worksheet about establishing working groups with ideas about how and when the group will meet and what the group wants to be named. You can give each person this form to use for the activity. Another interactive activity is to pick a name for your network. Having a recognizable name can help your network's longevity, like any marketing does. So this activity asks participants to come up with naming ideas based on your network's priorities, and then you can come together as a group and pick one. These can be good exercises for your follow-up convenings after your first one. Now, the final section of our online network development guide is on expanding network capabilities. This section includes a bunch of resources on how to expand your network. For example, you can provide free education and outreach materials from the CFPB that you can order for free at consumerfinance.gov/order. We also offer you tools for measuring your success, and these can be especially helpful if you're doing grant reporting or grant writing. And if your network is looking for money to support itself, we have a list of possible funding resources that you may want to consider to keep your network afloat. We also list some of the cross-training topics that I discussed earlier, which you could use to help train people in the network about elder fraud and response. And finally, we have a list of key observances and dates. A lot of networks have found that it's effective to plan events in connection with events like World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. That can be a really great way to bring people together. So these are all just ideas for networks to pick and choose from. As I said at the beginning, this network development guide, it's not prescriptive. It just gives you the tools to do what's best for your community. And we hope that with this newly updated online network development guide, which again, the link to it is in the EFPRN FAQs and links, but it's consumerfinance.gov/elder networks. And we hope with this guide, it'll be easier for you all to establish networks and to help them grow. So now that I've talked about our network development guide, I'll turn it over to Ben Miller, who's going to tell you a bit about how some of these network convenings have worked in the past, highlighting some success stories and lessons learned. Ben?
Thank you so much, Lisa. So you've heard from Jennifer Duane about the foundational concepts behind networks, and Lisa just talked us through a whole variety of tools and resources that can be used to kick off networks in your state or in your community, and to also enhance networks that already exist there. We wanted to take a step back now and look at the emerging body of learnings that's coming from the variety of networks that are springing up across the country. And with each year, this body of learnings grows because more and more communities and more states are adopting a network approach to combating elder financial exploitation. The CFPB in 2022 collaborated with leaders in 3 places to do place-based convenings. So in Hawaii, in Maryland, and in Western Pennsylvania in 2022, there were convenings to kick off and to expand network-based collaborations around combating elder financial exploitation in those 3 places. 2 of them were virtual. The Hawaii event was virtual, the Maryland event was virtual, and the Western Pennsylvania event was a real milestone because that was the first real post-COVID return to in-person convenings. And each of these was successful and interesting in its own way. So taking these one by one, in Hawaii, we wanted to share just a couple of takeaways from each one of these. In Hawaii, one of the key takeaways was that there was potential, and there is potential, for a statewide network that oversees island-specific networks. So one of the things that out of this convening that leaders in Hawaii are working on is having that statewide umbrella that provides oversight or that provides support and encouragement to real island-specific sub-networks. And that's an exciting frontier that leaders in Hawaii are pursuing. In Maryland, there's a slightly different point of emphasis. One of the really, fertile parts of that conversation in Maryland was there were many opportunities for cross-training among the various organizations that were participating in that convening. So the law enforcement presence, the financial institutions, the adult protective services, all of the various contributors to that convening, increasingly over the course of the convening, we're finding connection points where if they understood each other's work better, there were ways to work more effectively together. And then in Western Pennsylvania, this was an exciting convening. It was regional in nature, and we had not only a single county represented, we had a number of counties represented in Western Pennsylvania, and we had at the table and part of the organization putting on the convening were statewide regulators, including the Department of Banking and Securities and others as well, the Agency on Aging in Pennsylvania as well. And so this was an interesting convening because each county was taking a set of different action items for either starting or re-energizing their county-specific networks. And in addition to that, the state organizations, the state regulators, took away a plan for convening that could be replicated in other parts of the state. I'll pause there. Jennifer, I wanted to invite you to add any additional insights or thoughts you had on these three convenings that the CFPB supported in 2022.
Yes, thanks, Ben. I do want to mention that in Hawaii, Maryland, and Western Pennsylvania, there was a really key set of collaboration partners that took the lead here, which is just so exciting. In Hawaii, we had the first time around and the second time around, there were two convenings there. There was a very strong turnout and leadership investment by various sectors of the financial services industry, ranging from not so much industry, but from the all three of these states states had the banking commissioner, the commissioner on banking, provide an introduction in the beginning, which really encourages other financial institutions to attend. So that was a key success mechanism there. And then also in Hawaii, a executive from the payments industry, this one in particular is Matcha. The payments industry is a section of the banking industry. They're the payments processors. So the leader of Matcha, along with the Hawaii Credit Union League and the Hawaii Bankers Association, all participated in the planning committee, participated in production, and did a tremendous amount of work to support APS and law enforcement and others with conducting both of those programs. There were over 200 in attendance at the first event in Hawaii, many of which were representing the financial services industry. So that was really exciting. And then in Maryland, the Department of Banking and Securities took a leadership role there. And again, we had a tremendous turnout from financial services folks who are increasingly really joining in with networks and supporting initiatives in their areas. And Western Pennsylvania was headed up also by the Department of Banking and Securities there. And again, had tremendous turnout, especially considering it was such a rural event in Western Pennsylvania. So we're very pleased as federal financial institution regulatory enforcement authority. We're very, very pleased to see our financial services folks joining with social services, legal services, law enforcement, et cetera, to collaborate on these initiatives.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And we wanted to show everybody this slide, not only to see the beautiful landscape of Hawaii, but the logos running along the bottom of the slide really speak to, Jennifer, your point about the broad base of support for this this convening. You can see Matcha there, that's the Payments Industry Association, represented by their logo, but also a variety of other partners coming to the table. So this was a great roundtable experience. We talked a little bit about the place-based convenings that happened in 2022. There's also a really unique event that the CFPB convened and with partners, and this was an LGBTQ+ EFPRN summit. And you can see here that this was done in collaboration with the FTC, the National Center on Elder Abuse, the University of Southern California, and also SAGE, which is an organization dedicated to supporting LGBTQ+ older Americans. So what made this unique is it was all focused on the increasing recognition that older Americans that are members of the LGBTQ+ community are sometimes especially made the target of particular forms of financial exploitation. So this was an opportunity to bring leaders together and bring people together from across the country for a 2-day virtual event, really to unpack those issues and share information. This was a combination of presentations and hands-on planning sessions, but also listening sessions. So we used some of the time to hear from communities about the kinds of forms of exploitation they're seeing that particularly affect the LGBTQ+ community in those places. We also spent some of the time turning towards solutions that address those forms of exploitation. So ideas were generated around special outreach to segments of the LGBTQ+ community that heighten awareness of and resistance to fraud and scams. The group unpacked ideas related to more and better training on elder fraud that relates especially to LGBTQ+ older Americans. There are ideas that came up around enhanced tracking of scams that target that community, and also ways to build and sustain collaboration among the various partners that were represented at the virtual convening. So this was really a early but very, very fruitful and important event. Returning for a moment to the state of Maryland convening, one exciting thing that came out of that was some recognition at the state level from the governor of Maryland of the important work of that Maryland Elder Fraud Prevention and Response Network that was forming before our very eyes at that convening. And we also wanted to share a nice statement by Antonio Salazar, Commissioner of the Financial Regulation in Maryland. He said, "Each of our agencies has different strengths, different resources, and we need to work together to get the most out of them." And that really sums up, I think, the philosophy of the network approach to combating elder fraud and elder financial exploitation. We also wanted to share, some of these collaborators that were part of the Western Pennsylvania event. So you'll see that the Pennsylvania Department of Banking and Securities was at the table and a key driving force behind the organization of the whole event, as was the Pennsylvania Department of Aging. The Pennsylvania Office of the Attorney General was also a key collaborator, and we had that important engagement at the local level. Butler County was a huge driver of this event and had great representation from various sectors. And we had at the event, I would say, a dozen or almost a dozen representatives of other counties in Western Pennsylvania. And as we mentioned before, each of those representatives took action items back to their communities for ways they could start networks or reinvigorate networks or enhance networks that were active but could do more.
And Ben, I wanted to just add one thing here. Sorry, what you're all seeing here, these slides, are actually excerpts of the readouts that each of these convenings produces. When you use the development guide at consumerfinance.gov/elder networks, the development guide that Lisa went over also provides a sample of a readout that you can use to fill in the blanks, just like you're seeing here, a cover page and who's there, and records and documents the work that you did in that network convening, and in the end comes out with recommendations and sort of a roundup that you can go back to your network with, and then hopefully break up into the various groups according to your priorities, etc. But these are all excerpts of the readouts from these network convenings.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. We wanted to do a callback also to a few other convenings that happened in 2018 and 2019. I think these really illustrate that networks are contagious in a good way. There's almost a chain reaction, a positive chain reaction that happens when you do a network convening in your state or community. People pick up the baton and emulate that, and maybe hosting other events or starting networks elsewhere based on that original event that you hosted. So things like that happened in Montana, where in 2018 there was a convening that really launched several multidisciplinary teams led by the Attorney General's Department of Consumer Affairs and state APS. And likewise in Michigan, an important convening with the Sault Ste. Marie community in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan had a replication effect, and 7 networks sprang from that event. And we talked also about Hawaii and how that's really been a effort that has drawn in and energized people across the entire state. Jennifer, any additions or reflections on those or other convenings?
Oh, there's just so many. I mean, I'm really just in awe of all the great work that's being done out there, whether we've touched your work or not. We're just really very, I have to say, I've been in the work for over 20 years, and to see where we are now, I mean, obviously we have a long way to go to really tackle this issue or even catch up to it. But I just want to salute all of you for the great work you do out there. And for those of you that aren't doing it yet, there's been a couple questions about where to find networks. And I hope those answers are getting into the chat. I can't keep up with the busy chats here, but in the Network Development Guide, there is a resource section, and under the U.S. Department of Justice, Elder Justice Resources, you can find case review resources. You can find an Elder Justice Network locator, but I will emphasize that those are only Elder Justice networks that are run by government entities. Otherwise, if you are looking for a network locally, I recommend that you contact your local area agency on aging, or also known as AAA, or you can contact Adult Protective Services, but I would start with your area agency on aging. Legal services for elders or legal aid may also be connected, is usually connected to a local elder justice network, and there may be more than one, and there may be none, which presents an opportunity for you. Regardless of who you are, there was also a question about who do you need to be to start a network or to be in a network. And truly, it is a broad-based community effort. I mean, the usual folks are APS, law enforcement, financial services, legal services, and members of the aging network service provider groups, but there are others. We've seen librarians get involved in networks with community education and outreach, even leading networks. We've seen a librarian or two out there. So I hope that sort of covers some of the questions that have been asked. I'll stop there. I think we have
Great.
a video.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer. And that is a good reminder that we are taking questions in the Q&A box that's in the lower left of everybody's screen. So do let us know what else you'd like us to cover later in the webinar when we have a Q&A session. Great, and before we leave this slide, we just wanted to also mention that there's some really key collaborators that are helping us, helping the CFPB and others on the frontier of this network work. The AARP had a key webinar with veteran prosecutor Paul Greenwood in October of 2022. So that was an important event for spreading the word about this approach. The National Adult Protective Services Association has been hugely supportive and a key part of the spread of EFPRNs across the country. And at their conferences and as part of support directly to the CFPB, has been a key player in making this an approach that's really gaining steam across the country. And Jennifer spoke earlier about the payments industry, NACHA, MACHA, PacPay, WestPay. They also increasingly are at the table and part of these discussions about collaboration to combat elder financial exploitation. We've heard about how convenings are often diverse and they really kind of go in different directions based on the conditions within the community and the opportunities that the given community has for collaboration. But there's some themes. Often a convening will generate ideas for when to meet next. It really is the first kickoff event that generates a series of meetings that are ongoing engagement points for partners. So that, though simple, is incredibly critical to make this be a sustained collaborative effort. In addition, convenings also result in people realizing who else needs to be at the table for the next meeting. And so that's an important function of these convenings as well, to figure out who is the full set of organizations in the community or in the state that needs to be part of conversations and collaborations. In many places, there's a push and a movement towards creating information sharing platforms where people, even though they're working in different places in different sectors, can share resources and information and work off of common tools to do their work. And in addition, many networks set up a way to reflect on their impact and goals so that they can set themselves up for ongoing enhancement of their activities and ongoing improvement. So we wanted to pause here, and we're going to, in a moment, show you a video that summarizes how St. Louis's convening came together and what came out of that event. That was in January 2021. While we watch the video, do be thinking to yourself about questions for the Q&A portion of our training, and we will head into that portion of today after this video.
On January 26, 2021, in St. Louis, Missouri, the Elder Fraud Prevention and Response Network Retreat was convened for an audience of professionals who work in the field of elder financial protection at the local, state, and federal level, with a focus on activities in the greater St. Louis region. The goal of the network retreat was for elder justice stakeholders to discuss how to expand and enhance collaboration to prevent and resolve cases of elder financial exploitation. A network is a sustained and largely voluntary collaborative effort of stakeholders who work to prevent, detect, and respond to elder financial exploitation. This was the 10th network retreat coordinated and facilitated by the Office for Older Americans at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The St. Louis Elder Financial Protection Coalition worked closely with the CFPB to plan and produce the interactive online live platform. Program development, production, and technical support for the retreat were made possible through a partnership with the National Adult Protective Services Association, known as NAPSA. More than 40 retreat participants, guests, and moderators attended the half-day event. They were drawn from a range of state, local, and federal regulatory and law enforcement agencies, and from financial institutions, elder lawyers, and aging services providers. During the half-day program, they brainstormed about the multiple St. Louis elder justice collaborations that already exist. Their ultimate goal was to explore how to expand collaboration to prevent and resolve more elder financial exploitation cases.
I am delighted to join you for this groundbreaking, that's a term you'll hear a lot today, virtual Elder Fraud Prevention and Response Network convening retreat.
We here in the Eastern District of Missouri and United States Attorney's offices across the country are committed to doing our part. We aim to identify, investigate, and prosecute those that prey on the vulnerable.
The retreat participants attended one of 5 breakout sessions, which considered the following themes in terms of successes, challenges, and action items. Each group captured its discussions in notes that were then shared in the following general session. Successes and opportunities were also recorded by breakout participants on the themes of legislative advocacy, multi-agency protocols, and victim assistance legal services. In the general session, members of each group identified numerous next steps that could strengthen collaboration. Next major steps included the following action items. Educate our network members and the public about where to find the right resources. Create an online portal which could help stakeholders seek assistance from each other in particular cases. Cross-train on the professional terminology of various stakeholders, APS, financial, law enforcement. Ensure continuity of network participation. Find funding to establish network as a sustainable entity. Involve stakeholders from faith communities, unions, academia, and public policy experts. The retreat participants were enthusiastic about the retreat and excited about the possibilities of strengthening the coalition.
The network retreat was a great way for elder justice stakeholders in the St. Louis region and staff at state agencies to learn all about the benefits of being a member of a broader coalition to protect older adults. Being in the MDT has helped my organization, Aging Ahead, strengthen ties with other advocates, come up with creative preventative approaches, and work more productively toward our mission of supporting the journey of aging. If you would like to become a part of the St. Louis Elder Financial Protection Coalition, please contact me, Lisa Knoll, or Mary Tucker at the email addresses shown on the screen. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for watching that video with us. It was a great summation of what these events really can be in the communities and states where they are held. This has been, we're moving towards wrapping up for today, but we wanted to give you a quick glimpse of what's coming up. This is the first in a 5-part series, and we really are excited about what's coming up. So next week on February 8th, and then following that on February 15th, we have a 2-part showcase. And both of these events will showcase promising practices from successful elder fraud prevention and response networks. So with Michigan and South Carolina, we've got 2 of the country's most firmly established networks, really sharing how from prosecution to legal aid to other partners, they've really pioneered the way on how networks can do good work in their states and in their communities. And Hawaii and Florida are the same. In Hawaii, in particular, we'll have two representatives of the financial industry talking about how they have led the way in that state on the network approach to combating elder financial exploitation. And Florida is also among the country's oldest and most firmly established networks. On the February 22nd, we'll be hearing from the CFPB on a new report on recovering from elder financial exploitation. And this is hot off the presses, and we'll be able to hear from Hector Ortiz and also Lisa Schifferle on that important research. And that webinar will also feature Dr. Bonnie Olson. She's with the University of Southern California, their School of Medicine, and she'll be talking about tools and resources on the emotional impacts of elder financial exploitation. So incredibly important webinar there. And then finally on March 1st, we'll hear from Lisa Schifferle of the CFPB and also Ron Haurigi of FDIC on Money Smart for Older Adults, a wonderful and free resource that you can use in your communities to help older adults be more aware of and resistant to exploitation. And on the screen and also in our FAQs and links box, these are ways you can get in contact with and interact with the CFPB around this and other topics. So please don't hesitate to email the CFPB using eldernetworks@cfpb.gov or use these links to mine the Ask CFPB body of knowledge or to submit a complaint. At this point, I wanted to invite Jennifer Duane to close our webinar. Jennifer?
Great. Well, thank you all so much for attending, and again, for all you do out there to protect older people from financial exploitation. If you have a question or you can't find resources that you need, feel free to email us at eldernetworks@cfpb.gov. And then, of course, the tool, the development guide is at consumerfinance.gov/elder networks. And again, if you want to be advised or apprised or notified of when the Office for Older Americans comes out with new resources or blogs or reports or all the stuff we do, you can sign up for our mailing list, which is consumerfinance.gov/older Americans. And that'll take you to the Older Americans web pages, which will also give you a lot of information on our free resources that you may need for your community outreach programs. We have lots of great materials for financial caregivers, the managing someone else's money guides. We have placemats. We have the Money Smart for Older Adults program. The list is quite long. And we also have information and guidance for financial institutions. And even if you are not a financial institution, if you're wanting to work with financial institutions, I strongly recommend that you read our materials for financial institutions on elder financial exploitation, because it will help you to learn the lingo, to learn the vocabulary, and to know how we engage them so that you also can engage them as well. So with that, I thank you very much for taking the time today, and we look forward to seeing you next week for the next in the series. Good afternoon.